Laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Trans athlete Leah Thomas dominates the headlines. The BBC goes out of its way not to misgender a serial killer, and the NHS fails to support a patient who claims that she was sexually assaulted on a hospital ward. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to the show. We all know the story. Two con men pretending to be clothes makers turn up at the palace and tell the emperor that they can create for him the most magnificent outfit. When they set up their looms and start weaving, the emperor and his officials notice that the looms appear to be empty. But the emperor doesn't want to complain in case he looks like a fool. Eventually the outfit is finished and the two con men mime dressing the emperor, and everyone tells him how wonderful the garment is. Buoyed by this praise, he sets off on a procession through the city before his subjects. Everyone's a bit confused that the emperor is walking naked through the streets, but no one dares say anything. Why would they? Why would you speak out when everyone else is silent? Maybe the emperor isn't naked at all, and it's all in your head. Maybe, if you say something, you'll get punished. In the end, it takes a child to point and laugh and expose the fraud. The Emperor's New Clothes by Hans Christian Andersen was originally published in 1837, but it feels more relevant than ever. Just look at this.
Great. Good for her.
Excited?
Really yeah.
Leah's competing in the finals. Who do you think's going to win?
I have literally no idea.
I don't know anything about
I don't know anything about swimming.
NCAA swimming.
Yeah. I'm just here supporting.
Did you guys watch Leah Thomas swim?
Yes.
What did you think?
Great swimmer.
Beautiful swimmer.
Beautiful swimmer.
They're talking about the swimmer Leah Thomas, who has smashed a number of records and on Thursday won the 500-yard freestyle in Atlanta. But what is it they are conspicuously not saying? Well, Leah Thomas is a transgender athlete, a biological male, and therefore has obvious physical advantages over others in the race. And reactions to this seem to be split between those who just talk as though Leah Thomas is no different from the other competitors, and those who, like the child in the story, point out the obvious truth. Earlier this week, Baroness Nicholson of Winterbourne spoke in the House of Lords about a woman who had allegedly been raped on a hospital ward. And when police contacted the hospital, they were told that there were no men on the single-sex ward and therefore the rape could not have happened. But one of the patients on the ward was transgender. There was CCTV footage of the assault, and it's taken over a year for the hospital to admit this. One wonders how many other cases like this there have been. Now, the NHS constitution guarantees single-sex accommodation, but Baroness Nicholson has alerted the public to a policy known as Annex B, which means that if any female patient complains, they are to be told that it's not true. There are no men there. Don't trust the evidence of your eyes. If we tell you that the Emperor is wearing clothes, then he's wearing clothes. And if you think differently, you better shut your mouth. How did we get to this point? Well, in 2010, Health Secretary Andrew Lansley announced that NHS wards must be segregated by sex. But I've seen a document from the same year from the NHS Information Standards Board entitled Mixed Sex Accommodation Specification, which makes clear that the segregation was by gender, not sex, and that the public ought to be told different in order to prevent confusion. So here's what it says. The policy commitment relates to gender, not sex, but to ensure a better public understanding, it is referred to as mixed sex accommodation. So there it is in black and white, the NHS admitting that it will be misleading the public. Now, I put in a Freedom of Information request to NHS England and asked the following question. Please, can you clarify who made the decision to misinform the public on how the policy was implemented? And when was this decision made? Is it still official NHS policy to speak of sex to the public when gender is what is actually meant? In their reply, they said that NHS England does not hold recorded information in relation to this request. However, they did say that the current guidance on delivering same-sex accommodation recommends that trans people be accommodated according to their presentation. This guidance is currently under review with a focus on ensuring privacy, dignity and safety for all patients. We aim to publish the reviewed guidance by April 2022. So at least we have clarification there from the NHS that they accommodate people on the basis of gender identity rather than biological sex, even though Andrew Lansley had specifically pledged in 2010 that biological sex would be the determining factor. Murky stuff. And now with the revelation of this Annex B policy, where staff will tell patients that they are simply imagining that men are present on female wards, we have reached a point whereby the NHS is openly gaslighting its patients. Now, the term gaslighting means to deny observable reality in order to make someone else doubt their own senses. The word comes from the 1940 movie Gaslight, in which a husband convinces his wife that she's going insane by, among other things, dimming the lights and then denying that the house is getting darker when she points it out. But there have been so many examples of gaslighting. Remember when CNN claimed that protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin were mostly peaceful, in spite of the clearly visible backdrop of burning cars and buildings? Or when the BBC reported on what they called largely peaceful protests, even though in the same headline it notes that 27 police officers were injured. And how about this one? This is also from the BBC earlier this week. So it tells the story of an 83-year-old woman who has been arrested for killing and dismembering another old woman she met online. The elderly killer had been in prison for over 50 years, having murdered 2 female friends. Now, it might be my prejudice, but this doesn't sound like the behaviour of an elderly 83-year-old woman. There are very few female serial killers, even fewer who target other women. And it's only towards the end of this BBC article that we get a reference to the fact that the killer had, quote, recently identified as a woman. So it's literally inserted into the text as an aside, as though this is some inconsequential aspect of the case. So the BBC were misrepresenting the case. This is a man who has killed women, but we're expected to pretend otherwise. Now, I've always been of the view that if someone feels that they are in the wrong body and transitions in order that they can live a happy life, I will call them by the name they want to be called, and I will happily use the pronouns of the opposite sex out of courtesy. But I don't think that courtesy ought to extend to men who choose to murder women. If murderers get upset about being misgendered, my sympathy is limited. People often say that the culture war is a right-wing myth, or that it's just a few students getting overexcited about a cause, or that it's all just noise on the internet. But let's take a step back and see what is actually happening here. So we've got biological males competing in women's sports and telling us that it's fair. NHS hospitals are telling women they couldn't possibly have been raped because there were no men on that ward. The BBC is reporting on male serial killers but using female pronouns. We have reached a point where major institutions, mainstream media outlets, even our hospitals are lying to us and telling us that if we don't go along with the lie, we're bigots. That unless we deny the truth of what we can so plainly see, we're reactionary and hateful and ought to be ashamed of ourselves. You remember that line from George Orwell's 1984? The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. This is what tyranny looks like, when those in power create a pseudo-reality and the rest of us have to read along from the approved script. Now, I've always taken the liberal view when it comes to trans rights. As far as I'm concerned, anyone has the right to call themselves whatever they like, to dress however they like, to undertake surgery if that's what they need to do. I've spoken to enough trans people to know how difficult it is to go through that process and to live with that continual feeling that you're not in the right body. And trans people deserve protection from those who would see their basic human rights denied. But in a liberal system, no one has the right to demand that other people use language that they don't want to use, or to demand that people pretend to believe something they don't believe, or to demand that people deny reality, because that means you're taking away the rights of others. So my feeling is this: we need to stop going along with the lie. We need to be braver. We need to take our cue from the child in Hans Christian Andersen's story, pointing out the obvious when most people are too afraid to do so. And when you do this, and you will inevitably be smeared as hateful and transphobic, remember that that is simply an extension of the coercive strategy. It is perfectly possible to oppose anti-trans hatred and prejudice and to simultaneously understand the importance of speaking truth and not surrendering to a world of fiction. My panellists this evening are the comedians Nick Dixon and Lewis Schaefer, everyone. Now, thank you both. Thank you both for joining me. Now, I'm sorry we started on a serious note, but there's been an awful lot of sort of murky, grim stories this week, and I thought we had to address it head on.
By being more murky.
By being even more morbid, exactly. But that's why you're here, to bring us up.
I don't know, I'm feeling murky.
No, the problem is that Lewis is in a bad mood, and I've just made it worse, frankly. It's not, but then...
I can't believe he's got sympathy already. He's barely said anything.
Nick is very competitive, so he's upset that you're sympathising with Lewis. But it's not...
Fine, I'll win anyway.
You will win anyway. But, I mean, you know, it has got to the point now, hasn't it, with the sort of Leah Thomas. I think with Leah Thomas, it has really piqued a lot of people. You know, they've seen, you know, it's just unfair, and you know, it's absolutely clear that no one's against her or against trans people or anything else. It's just that when you see a biological male in women's sports, it's difficult to justify that.
I'm torn on it because part of me thinks men should take the win. You know what I mean, in that swimming contest, but also, but the other part of me is like you say, this will wake more and more people up. It's like a giant red pill, to use the internet vernacular, because people...
I knew you'd go there.
People see something so patently absurd on the face of it, they're going to start asking more questions and saying it's about time we stand up to more of this. So that's the positive, is it's reached such a ridiculous point. Like you say, the emperor has no clothes.
I mean, it is interesting that they've started calling the silver medal women's gold. That's what people have started to suggest. I mean, do you think that's fair enough? What do you think, Lewis?
Well, I mean, you got to feel for everybody, really. You got. I mean, like when you're saying your thing, it's like you're totally right, but you feel for the people. Anybody who's willing to like, but it just shows how you get points for wearing a dress.
That's the most on the fence thing you've ever said.
It is pretty on the fence for you. I can't imagine you wearing a dress.
Because you were so strong. That's why I'm on the fence. I don't really have much of a personality.
You're just an empty husk, Lewis.
No, you know what it is. It's like they were booing her at that swim thing.
Yeah.
And they would only boo her if they thought she were a dude.
Yeah, no, this is true. This is true. But you know, but then when I see the booing and stuff, I do sort of feel I feel that's not very nice either. Do you know what I mean? I think we've got some footage here to which we can see. But you know, this is a previous race, by the way, and Leah Thomas really did almost a length in front of everyone else. I realise though she's in the final. She just came last, I think, or came 8th or something like that. But the point is, I mean, I was talking to.
Did she throw it? Do you think?
You know, there are all sorts of speculation. I absolutely don't know. But it really doesn't matter, actually. It's about the principle of the thing. The races that she won earlier did knock out other female swimmers, and I've heard them talking about the effect that this has on them, and it has a kind of cascading effect.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, anyway, look, we could talk about this for a long time, and I'm going to be talking to Baroness Nicholson later on about the Annex B story, because I think that is incredibly serious, and I'm really glad that she raised that in the House of Lords. But look, let's bring our audience in straight away because we have some questions. Let's go to Ryan. Where's Ryan?
Hello.
Hello, Ryan. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So, my question is Ukraine the new Brexit?
OK, now, so this is the Conservative Spring Conference. Now, you will know what happened here. Most of you will. Are you up on the news? Are you up on that? Doesn't matter if you're not, because I'll explain. So Boris Johnson was giving a talk, and he was talking about the idea of freedom and the instinct that people have for freedom. And he was talking about how the people of Ukraine have chosen freedom, you know, to fight back, much like the people in the UK voted Brexit. OK? So this is... it's felt a bit shoehorned in, I think. What do you think, Nick?
I thought it was brilliant. It was everything that Boris has done that he thinks is a good achievement is like Ukraine. So he said, Brexit is much like Ukraine. And then he moved on. He said, the vaccine rollout is also like Ukraine. I'm not seeing some of these things. It's like our new national insurance rate, a lot like Ukraine, guys. You see, so that was the thing. It was just, he was shoehorning in anything good he had done to be like Ukraine in a fairly clumsy way, which was a bit awkward. But then when it really annoyed the EU, I thought it is pretty funny. You know what I mean? Just to troll Guy Verhofstadt is always a bit of a laugh.
Do you think he does this in every aspect of his... Like when he's having dinner with Carrie, this is a lot like Ukraine, the way you've prepared the soup.
The tension between us.
The sexual tension is a lot like Ukraine. Lewis, do you think it's appropriate to make a comparison?
I think it's totally appropriate because, in a way, the Brexit thing was about how Europe thought that they had enough support within the English-speaking people of
They did think that,
They did think that. In the same way the Russians thought they had support for Russia among the Russian-speaking people of the Ukraine.
Well, it's a bit tenuous, I think.
Yeah.
Are you one of these Putin apologists, Lewis?
You know why? I'm sorry. I'm not a Putin apologist, but I think that that's not the thing we're getting on.
He doesn't want you to interrogate him on that,
Okay,
which I think is perfectly fair enough.
Yeah.
I think it's just Boris, though, putting his foot in it again.
I think Boris Johnson is a typical English person. Where
You've just insulted the audience here.
He always insults England.
He does this every week.
Because
Go
what
on.
channel
is
he's
that
on.
where English people think they're the center of the universe and that everything revolves around. Yeah, it's totally true, and everything revolves around them, and anything that happens to them, it's about me, me, me.
Have you ever met an American? I mean, surely.
But the difference is, America is the center of the universe.
Oh, I knew it. I knew that was coming. Anyway, look, we've got another question now. This is from Liz. Where is Liz?
Hello.
Hello, Liz. How are you?
I'm good. So I have a question. Do you think sending people back to the moon is immoral?
Okay, so now, as you'll know, it's been 50-odd years since we sent people to the moon, and fuel costs are at record levels. And NASA has introduced the mega rocket, in which it plans to send crew back there. And after making the journey to the moon, it will go on to Mars. I'm actually quite excited about this, because well, Nick, you seem sceptical already, I can see.
Well, you're saying back to the moon. I mean, that assumes that we went.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Everyone, I just want to give balance for Ofcom reasons. He's saying we went, I'm saying maybe we
For
didn't.
goodness sake, you know, people say this about, like, I have too many conspiracy theorists. It's just you.
No, I'm just giving the point is, that first time...
Did you see the strings?
The dodgy film. All I'm saying, the film is dodgy. We may have been, but the film is definitely not
We may
real.
have been to the moon.
My question is, why did we go and then just leave it ages? Oh, we don't fancy going anymore. We beat the Russians, now we just don't want to go for ages. Bit soft.
OK, was the moon landing footage directed by Stanley Kubrick? What do you think?
I don't know who the director was, but I know that America's the greatest country in the world. It's the greatest country in the world. And that, you know, you say it was faked. Well, if it was fake, there's been 6 moon landings. That means America has faked it 6 times. No other country has even faked it once.
Yeah, so actually, that is an achievement in of itself, you know?
Yeah.
And look, I'm convinced, so if it is a fake, it's...
Yeah, and it's super well done. And I'll tell you something else. You say we put a man on the moon. I don't know where your tax dollars went, because I don't think you were involved in that as an English person.
No,
okay?
I was talking about humanity. Because I don't see these national borders, you know. I'm very much a we are the world kind of.
Well, do you know
person.
something? It's very generous of you to include America as part of humanity, considering how bad-mouthed you people
I love
are.
America.
You know what? OK, so look, this show has descended very rapidly into sort of this jingoistic horn locking. And I absolutely don't want that for this
It's because
show.
of Nick Dixon.
It is
I
most
love
of this
America. I like the biggest fan of America.
He loves America.
I was engaged to America. What more do you want me to do, Luke?
I want you to admit, whether it's true or not, that America landed on the moon.
Look, I'm going to say this outright, OK? I'm going to say this outright. It's most definitely the case that America landed on the moon. It happened. There is substantial evidence, overwhelming evidence. And how could you keep a conspiracy like that? There were tens of thousands of people involved in that project. Everyone would have to be lying.
And have you ever spoken to an American? They can't keep their mouth shut.
They can't.
They're always
Exactly.
chatting. You guys, why is James Bond the #1 spy in the world? Because you can keep your mouth.
Because we can keep a secret. That's exactly right.
Because you're evil.
Next week.
Thank you, Liz. That's lovely. Let's move on. We've got a question from Amal. Where is Amal? Hello, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. So, do you think steam trains are racist?
OK, so this is the latest article about what's racist this week. Of course, every week new things are discovered to be racist. This time it's a steam train. So this is a train dating back to 1804, which has been decolonised over links between steam power and the slave trade. This is at Swansea's National Waterfront Museum, which has a replica of the first steam locomotive. But what was quite interesting about this steam train issue is that the creator of this particular steam train had no ties to the slave trade at all, and no one says he has. And it's just that they're saying that steam was used during the empire to power various things. So it's the steam that is racist. I mean, this is tenuous in the extreme, isn't it?
Well, I think maybe the train should take some responsibility for what its ancestors did. The ancestors probably were some way involved in in bringing slaves from somewhere to somewhere.
Well, I mean, I would go so far as to say people born in 1804 or thereabouts probably had attitudes that we would consider unacceptable today. I think that's probably
maybe
true.
they should pay. Maybe they should, stop all boats, because boats were used.
Boats were definitely used during the empire.
Yeah.
But they were also used to stop the transatlantic slave trade as well. So does that balance it out?
I never told Lewis if he's being sarcastic. If these are actual ideas he has, it's impossible.
I'm just going to say, Nick, I think you should ignore everything that Lewis says.
Okay.
That's a kind of general rule, or just assume that he's not being sincere.
And when did the steam train come in? It came in the 1800s, long after slavery was outlawed. So,
well, no, it did make the point in the article that I read about this that, you know, this particular steam train turned up sort of after the slave trade had been outlawed. So, you know, it does seem an odd target, doesn't it? Come on, sorry.
I was going to make a really boring, serious point about it. Not boring, very interesting, serious point.
Make
Well, this is all part of this weird hatred we have for our own history. It's become trendy amongst the middle classes of Britain to just denigrate our history. We think even now we think the EU is amazing and we're terrible. So I was in a pub, everyone knows I don't drink, but it was after the football, and I was in the pub, we play football, and I was speaking to these are very North London people, great people, but one of them said to me, oh, well, you know, Britain's empire did terrible things. And I pointed out it was arguably a relatively benign empire compared to many of them. And I nicked your mate Douglas Murray's line. I said, when's Turkey going to apologise for the Ottoman Empire? And he looked at me blankly and I had no idea what I was talking about. And this idea we've got that our history is uniquely evil, it is not true. And also, this idea of going back and erasing history is not effective. It's not going to work. No. So they think they're doing a good thing with this steam train nonsense or whatever. We always cover one of these stories every week, and they think it's effective. I dispute both of those points.
Well, when we have Leo Kearse on this show, and he often makes this point about how there is more slavery today than there ever has been in the past. And therefore, rather than attacking a steam train from 1804 over the most tenuous links to slavery you can possibly imagine, that it has steam coming out of it, why not actually tackle the problem of human trafficking in today's world? That would make more sense, wouldn't it? I mean, this just seems like, you know, it's the very definition of
well, as one of the few people here whose ancestors were involved, because I'm a Jew and we still haven't been paid for the pyramids, we haven't gotten an apology from those people, or paid from the Egyptians. Maybe that if you go and visit the pyramids, that you are participating in some kind of slavery type of thing.
So you want reparations from the Egyptians?
Yes.
OK, well, we'll see what we can do. I can't promise anything, Lewis, but, you know, we'll
I mean, let's face it, my career is not doing that well. So
a bit of that Egyptian cash would be very helpful. Yeah. All right, let's quickly...
I have a Palestinian friend, and that's close enough.
It's close. Well, you're building bridges. Wonderful. Yeah. OK, so next we've got, before we go to the break, it's a quick time for a question from Roger. Where is Roger? Yeah. Hello, Roger.
Hello. Should company rebrands erase past performance?
Yeah, company rebrand. So Hermes has changed its name. Hermes, as you know, is the delivery company, and basically they haven't done it. By the way, it's not because they're cancelling the Greek god of the Greek herald to the gods. You know, he's the Greek equivalent of Mercury, isn't he, with the wings on his feet? They're not cancelling Hermes. Hermes did nothing wrong. He didn't exist, actually, I should say. But they're rebranding it Hermes to Every, E-V-R-I. I think that's how they're pronouncing Every. Because they've had all sorts of allegations about bad customer service, parcel mishandling, failing to pay its couriers appropriately. They've just been a complete mess. And they sort of kind of think that if we just change the name, everyone will forget. Everyone will forget that they did all those horrible things. That's not going to work, is it, Lewis?
Well, it worked for Germany. Now they're called Europe.
That's true. What do you think, Nick?
I was going to say it's a bit like the trans swimming thing again. It's just you just change the name, and everyone's like, oh, it's not a man, it's a female swimmer. So it's very similar, isn't it? Just changing the name of things rather than actually doing anything.
Yes.
Because apparently it's so hard for the couriers to actually do all their deliveries. Their advice is just throw it over the gate.
Oh, it's absolutely that's what they do.
That was the advice they gave to another courier because they can't possibly do all their deliveries in time.
I spoke to. I'm with them. They should change their name because they're absolutely horrible. They're actually. I lost faith in the United States of America when the U.S. Embassy used them as their courier agent in this country.
Is that right?
And they were impossible. And then I spoke to the dude when he finally arrived, and he told me that he had 90 packages to deliver in one day.
No, look, I understand it's hard. It's not an easy job, but I do think sometimes, because I've had people just throw packages into the puddle outside my house, and then the book gets all wet inside, and it does make you angry. But by the same time, it's a difficult job.
No, it's a difficult job. If you have 90 of those things, it's impossible.
But rebranding, good idea. Do you think? I mean, United States of America, if it just called itself something else, you could forget about all the atrocities it caused in the past. What about that?
No, because America's the greatest country in the world.
Well, look, that's very much the motif of the show today, that America is the greatest country in the world. But look, after the break, on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be meeting the woman going head-to-head with Bristol University over her feminist principles. And later, we will, of course, have our social sensations as these Ukrainian refugees became internet stars. All that and more on the way. Do not go anywhere. See you in a minute.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, when my first guest this evening was accepted onto a PhD programme at the University of Bristol, she was delighted. But Raquel Rosario Sanchez has now taken legal action against the establishment after she says she has been threatened and bullied for speaking up on women's rights. And Raquel Rosario Sanchez joins me today. Thank you. Now, I want to ask you about, because of course you came to this country from the Dominican Republic. I suppose you had a perception of what it would be like on a university campus here in the UK, but it looks like those perceptions were pretty roundly devastated once you got here.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us what happened when you came here first and how this came about?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I was delighted to be accepted in a PhD here from the Dominican Republic. I thought that it would be a very open, tolerant, and welcoming environment. And my PhD is in violence against women. So around the time that I came here in late 2017, early 2018, they were having these discussions about the reform of the Gender Recognition Act.
Yes.
And I am an expert in gender.
Yeah.
So I decided to share a meeting, a feminist meeting, to discuss these policy issues. And then the second that was publicized, then trans activist staff and students at the University of Bristol, they thought that was unacceptable.
The fact that you were holding this meeting and having
sharing
this
the
discussion,
meeting,
just
not
sharing.
even talking. Yeah,
Okay.
so they thought that was unacceptable, and then a whole campaign that lasted years of bullying, intimidation, harassment just kicked off, and I asked the university for help over and over, and they just didn't help. In the end, they sided with the bullies.
So this is a story that we're getting again and again, and we've seen it from Kathleen Stock, for instance. We've seen it with Joe Phoenix, Anne Henderson in Scotland, Neil Finn. In your case, you're a student. But whenever these academics have been targeted for harassment, abuse, threats a lot of the time, the university's just backing off and not helping. And that seems to be the case with them. Did they say anything to you as to their reasons why they're not going to support you when you're getting this kind of intimidation?
They told us eventually, they told me eventually that they were being very supportive. I just had to trust their process. And they started some disciplinary procedures against some trans activists, but then they never asked them any questions. So they just allowed the bullying to continue. And this lasted almost 2 years. And while it was happening, I was not allowed to speak out. So that means that the trans activists kept bullying, harassing, and intimidating me. Meanwhile, I was quiet, I was silenced, I couldn't stand up for myself, and that took a horrible toll on my health. But what
was the form that the bullying took? What were they doing?
A lot of it was over social media, and they would target every single feminist event that I would participate on because they just didn't want the conversation to happen. And obviously all universities have policies against bullying and harassment. I showed that to the university. Here's the evidence. And it was very clear that they were reluctant to engage because they felt that it came across like they felt that it was a political issue.
Right.
And that they didn't want it to get involved. But then in the end, by not doing anything, then you are becoming involved by allowing that climate to fester.
Do you think this is because they believed that what the activists were saying was correct? Or is it because they feared repercussions for making any kind of stance against them?
Well, if you're a university, an academic institution, and this is the University of Bristol, which is like a £1 billion institution, if you're afraid of retaliation from your own students, then what position are you leaving your other students in? You know, I was just a student, I needed help, and they decided to do nothing substantial to stop the bullying and the harassment. I think that what we're arguing in litigation is that the university took a corporate political position. Like there are all of these issues going on, these debates, policy debates, and they feel that they have to take a political stance, and you don't have to take a political stance. All they have to do is support everyone equally, support the rights of trans students, support the rights of feminists, just treat everyone equally, and they just couldn't do that.
Yes, because that's the interesting thing, isn't it? That, you know, if it were trans activists being harassed and bullied, it would be right to stand up against those bullies as well. So it just feels as though there's a high degree of tolerance for what is, I've seen some examples of unacceptable harassment, threats, this kind of thing, and it just feels like they should just deal with this across the board. No matter, what was it that you were saying or were going to say within these events that had caused, why are they angry?
I was saying that we need more discussion. That was my point. My point is, you know what, if you want to reform a piece of legislation, if you want to advocate for trans rights, that's fine, let's discuss that.
Yes.
That's what I was saying. We need more debate, we need more open conversations about public policy. You cannot just impose your views on an entire nation or globally. So my whole point was, whatever reforms are to take place around gender, I am an expert in gender, I study social policy, this is my area. Let's bring people who can contribute to the conversation. But the point of the trans activists was that the conversation could not take place at all.
I see. Now, you're an expert in gender and violence against women, and I think a lot of people are confused about the way in which gender identity as a concept, and that as an ideological concept, can have a negative impact on women's rights. Can you explain why the two are in conflict?
I think that within feminism, we really adopted the term gender. And by gender, we meant sexist stereotypes. But this term became hijacked by other actors who had a different purpose, who had a different mission. And gender identity, what it does is that it sort of essentializes those stereotypes into intrinsic aspects of people. So, for example, if feminism used to say, boys and girls, boys can like pink and girls can like trucks, like that doesn't mean that you're the opposite sex. What gender identity does is that it says like, no, if you are a boy and you like pink, that makes you a woman. So it's a very pernicious infiltration of the feminist movement in which the concepts that we ourselves try to encourage society to adopt, they have been turned against us.
It's very difficult though, isn't it? Because whenever those points are raised about gender identity ideology, activists will say, well, you're just being hateful. You don't want us to exist. You don't want trans people to have the same rights that everyone else has. How do you respond against that charge?
There is nothing that I have said here or in my 4 years in the UK that can be described as hateful. All I'm saying is that we need to talk about this. And I think that if you want to advocate for any policy position, any political position, you can do that without threatening anyone, without bullying anyone, without harassing and intimidating anyone. And I think that there's a big problem both in academia and in the political discourse where we have normalized the abuse of women through this channel of gender identity ideology.
I mean, certainly when I've seen a lot of these threats online towards women and academics like yourself, they often take very explicitly misogynistic forms. You know, allusions to sexuality, to female anatomy. You know, the kind of unpleasant misogyny that, to be honest, I haven't seen for decades. This is something that seems to be resurging, and it does seem connected with the extreme trans activist movement, not trans people generally, just a very small contingent. But surely that isn't helping the cause of trans rights.
And it is a real shame because it doesn't help the trans cause at all. You know, if you want to advocate for trans rights, there are ways that you can advocate for all of those positions without having to resort to misogyny.
Yes.
But I think that what has happened is that we live in a patriarchy, and just people who had all these sexist attitudes just so, well, actually, this is a conduit, you know? We can use
This is a way we can do it.
This is a way that we can do it. Gender identity ideology. You have all of these men telling women to, like, shut up, telling women to, like, all of these horrible things. They wouldn't do that just by saying, I am a man and I'm telling all of these feminists to shut up. But if you say, I am a man telling all these women to shut up because their views on trans rights are unacceptable, then somehow that gets applause. Look at the treatment of J.K. Rowling.
Yes, of course. So coming from outside of the UK, did you have any kind of perception of what life would be like in higher education? Because don't we have quite an enviable reputation abroad for freedom of speech and academic freedom and that kind of thing?
Oh, yeah, the whole thing is so dreamy. You know, academia in the UK is presented as this very, like, welcoming environment where ideas can be debated, where you can really have lively conversations, and there's all this reputation about the Enlightenment and all that kind of stuff.
Of course, the Enlightenment's kind of a big deal.
You know, yeah, but from outside, you come in and you think that's what you're going to get. And then I think that there's a big problem. And unless people like me, students, academic, but also university academic institutions, unless they stand up against it, then that reputation is going to be gone. Because what people are seeing is, look at how they're treating students, look at how they're treating academics. Like, academic freedom is under threat in the UK, and that reputation of the UK as a beacon to debate and tolerance, that you could lose that.
And how widespread do you think this problem is? Because a lot of people just seem to deny it. You know, whenever I raise these issues, they say, oh, it's just a few students going a bit far on campus. But do you get the sense that this is actually not just at Bristol, this is all over the place?
I think that there are two elements there. And one is just the very vocal and vicious trans activist supporters who don't necessarily have to be trans people. And there are all the people, the silent majority, who says, well, I don't want to raise my head above the parapet because that's going to happen to me. So they don't support you, but also they don't denounce the abuse. So I think that this combination creates a climate in which you have individual women and individual men who want to stand up, and they feel really isolated because the support is not as vocal as you would like it to be, but it's because those people are afraid. And they have reason to be afraid if the academic institutions are just bowing down to the mob.
Have you had friends fail to stand up for you, or have you had enough support from your associates and colleagues and fellow students?
No, I'm very lucky that my family, my friends have been absolutely supportive. My Center for Gender and Violence Research at the University of Bristol, they have also been very supportive. It was just like this, the management, the higher-ups at the university, they did not want it. They were very reluctant to just support free speech for everyone. So in the end, they supported the free speech of the bullies so that they could bully with impunity, but they did not support my free speech to just talk about feminist issues without being intimidated.
And yet your expertise is on violence and intimidation against women.
Oh, yeah.
And them failing to stand, that sort of proves the point of your research.
Yeah, I just keep saying to people, I wanted to do a PhD. I didn't want the personal experience in, like, intimidation and abuse. But I think in the end, my family, what they keep saying to me is like, Raquel, you did 2 PhDs. You did the academic one, and then you did the actual expertise in the practice of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, it's a horrible story. Good luck with everything. And thank you for coming on to the show to talk about it. Raquel Rosario Sanchez, everyone.
Thank you.
Now, I should say that we did contact the University of Bristol, and they did release this statement to us. All concerns about harassment or bullying are taken seriously and action taken in accordance with our university policies. Plenty more to come on Free Speech Nation. We'll be answering some of your questions in Unfiltered Dilemmas. But before that, we'll be speaking to Baroness Nicholson about single-sex wards in hospitals. See you in a minute.
GBNews is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Welcome back. So later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Nick and Lewis, and we will help deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. If you've got any problems, specifically probably relating to free speech, but actually it could be anything, because we're like oracles. We can help you. Just email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we're going to do our best to answer your issues. An unnamed hospital in England has admitted a woman may have been raped by a transgender patient after denying the possibility of an attack for almost a year, the House of Lords has heard. When police were called after it was reported, they were allegedly told by staff that there was no male on the single-sex ward, therefore the rape, quote, could not have happened. But almost 12 months later, it emerged that one of the patients at the time was transgender, and the details of the case were shared by Baroness Nicholson of Winterbourne during a debate on single-sex wards, and she joins me here in the studio now. Baroness Nicholson, thank you so much. Lovely to see you. Now, this has caused quite a stir. You've raised this issue. I think it surprised a lot of people to hear that there is this problem within the NHS. Do you think there is a problem that it has been ideologically captured in some way?
I don't think it's anything to do with ideology. Well, it may be, of course, in the beginning, but in fact, the NHS got two conflicting sets of instructions out to wards. On the one, it says that every patient should have single-sex wards, should be housed with their own sex. This is an argument that's been going on since I was in the House of Commons, which is about 1 million years ago, and actually it all came through, and by 2008, 92% of all wards were single-sex.
Yes.
And it says in the instructions, of course, if you want to be, for example, an old couple with one dying, it might be a husband and a wife, then they sleep together, as it were.
Yes.
But basically, it's been the whole aim of the House of Commons, and a bit more the House of Lords, that single-sex wards should be the norm. 92% of the wards were reported in 2008 as being genuinely single-sex. And then in 2010, the whole thing flipped.
Because, of course, when you are in hospital, you're at your lowest ebb. You are particularly vulnerable, just not in terms of your illness, but in terms of you're somewhere that's alien to you. You don't know the people around you. It is very important, isn't it, for women to have the comfort of knowing they're around their own sex?
Women and men and children. It's patient safety, patient dignity, and patient privacy.
Yes.
So that's the right of all of us. And somehow, inside the NHS, this has been grossly interfered with and has been turned upside down without our knowledge. Now, I'm a parliamentarian, so my feeling of deep grievance is not just for the people themselves, but is the fact that they sidelined Parliament, because we'd spent 30 years arguing this through and got it, and it was almost 100% by the time we finished. 2010, it was flipped, and the NHS behind our backs didn't come back to Parliament, didn't say, well, you've been discussing this for 30 years and we now want to have a change. We think that people who are transgender should take over and should have priority. They didn't come and tell us that. It was slipped in. Really, as a parliamentarian, that's why I'm so annoyed.
Well, I think that's the reason why people are so angry, is because, you know, the document I saw from 2010, which was an official NHS document, talked about how they would talk about single-sex accommodation to the public, but what they meant was gender, but they wouldn't say that explicitly. So this is something that is very much underhand, I think.
It's worse than underhand. It's ruined the staffing, you see, because the first thing I knew about this was when two nurses came to see me in about 2018 or 19 and said, we've lost our jobs, please can you help? I said, I don't believe it. What do you mean you've lost your jobs? And then two teachers were with them and said, we've lost ours as well. Why? I don't understand. I said, I don't have a constituency. I'm just in the House of Lords now. But I was a European member of Parliament, so they came to see me. Well, we've lost our jobs because we refused to agree that a trans woman is a woman or a trans man is a man. In other words, these are classes, our courses, all our exams and everything. We're being asked to go right against the science. We can't. We've refused and we've lost our jobs.
Is it not the case, though, that surely of all institutions, the NHS needs to have an acknowledgement of biological reality? They need to understand the differences between men and women. I've even seen NHS documents talking about how sex is assigned at birth, when, of course, it is observed and recorded at birth. You would think medical practitioners would know this.
Well, that's exactly what the medical practitioners told me, and that's why they couldn't stay in the NHS. They lost their jobs because of it. They didn't walk out, but they were told, no, in that case, you can't be here. It's utterly appalling. But worse than that, you see, think what it's done to the staff to have to say to a woman, and I've got about a dozen now ladies, and they've all said there's a man in the ward, and they've been told, and that's the instruction of hospital trusts, ranging from Lincolnshire up to the north, right down to the south in Somerset, they're instructing the staff to tell an absolute blatant fib, that there isn't a man in the ward. But the problem is, as I've said to them, your argument is based on something you haven't yet proved, which is the NHS can actually change your sex. So far, nobody's demonstrated that to me. So,
yes. So let's be clear about this. So this Annex B policy.
Well, it started in 2010.
Right.
It was a much lighter document. It's actually, I think it's Annex D at that moment. I've got both on my iPhone for you to look at. But actually then, in about 2015, something changed. A big report came out a couple of years later, the Denton's report, and this was publicised and promoted and paid for by two vastly, vastly expensive American institutions, and it said we will aim to get transgender the same as gender throughout the globe. And a number of countries have fallen like dominoes, bong, 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 bong. Dear old Britain is a bit pig-headed, and we're not giving way to this inaccuracy. And on top of that, France has now come in. Darling old France across the channel has suddenly woke up. They're appalled by this, and bless them, the Swedes have now emerged, saying puberty blockers, which is what makes these children unable to conceive, unable to bear children, you know, they lose half their life in that sense. The Swedes have now come in, so we're fighting back. And funnily enough, in the report, it does say the most difficult country to convert in all of this will be the UK, because it's pig-headed. Thank goodness.
Right, okay.
Thank goodness.
Yes,
it
absolutely.
also says, because of all the incredible difficulty of the UK's public publicities, the machines, the televisions, the radios, and the newspapers, they will be in the way. They'll be a nuisance.
Well,
so please go on being a nuisance.
No, absolutely.
And I can tell you what, we parliamentarians can be a nuisance as well.
Yes. Well, I mean, as you absolutely should be. I mean, the problem with all of this, and this Annex B policy, which, as I understand it, so if a female complains and says there's a male on my ward, they say, no, there is not. And they just, they absolutely... And now, has that come from various NHS trusts then? That's not from the top? That's not from the Department of Health?
It's the top.
Oh, it is from the top?
Annex B is from the top, and it's been filtered down through the NHS trusts, who've rather foolishly, I think, rather like sheep who all gone astray, or like lemmings going over the cliff.
Yes.
They've all copied it, and then they've issued instructions to the hospitals saying this is what you do.
Who is responsible then? Is this because of Stonewall giving advice, or is it because of the Department of Health that just decided to get on board with this? Do we know where this originated from?
Well, I can tell you that there is a review. Actually, there are 3 reviews going on. There's a review that has been announced by the minister going on, and that is a very, very odd review indeed. the government has a set of rules and regulations for reviews that came out in 2018. And it says you've got to have independent people who mustn't have skin in the game, as it were.
I see.
And the couple of people who are doing the review not only have skin in the game, they actually are the game.
Right.
I mean, I like them, they're very intelligent, but I don't think they should be doing this at all.
Yes.
And so I've complained about that. I found another review that's going on, and then there's a third review that's going on. So at last we're causing problems.
Yes.
I'm delighted.
So in addition to parliamentarians and the media, raising awareness of these issues, what can staff members do? Because I'm sure, you mentioned the nurses who lost their jobs for raising concerns. I'm sure there are a lot of other people who would like to raise concerns, but they're fearful. That if they do...
Yes, but I'm not raising awareness. I'm trying to punch it in the chin, get rid of it.
Yes.
I want that to go, because we can't have the NHS being led down a terrible trail of telling lies to patients.
Yes.
So there I was outside my little door banging saucepans last year or the year before, and at the same time reading up, because we were under lockdown, it was the time to do it, reading up all the data on this and being briefed by people who are deeply unhappy. This is a traumatic thing for the NHS to do. We cannot allow it to go on.
And it is being reviewed, am I right? So and it should be by April, I believe, the new...
Well, there are 3 different reviews, so you pay your money and you get your choice.
Yes.
And I've already been told by one of the reviewers that actually it's a predetermined thing in any case and he's not going to have any changes. So he may have another thing coming. I'm giving more coffee next week.
Right, so there's going to be a fight.
We're going to get rid of it.
Fantastic. Well, Baroness Nicholson, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, fingers crossed.
Thank you. Coming up on Free Speech Nation, there'll be an exclusive clip from my podcast this week with the writer, comedian and co-founder of Stonewall, Simon Fanshawe. Don't go away.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. On my upcoming podcast episode, I'm joined by the writer, comedian, and one of the co-founders of Stonewall, Simon Fanshawe. In our conversation, we spoke about his new book, The Power of Difference, and issues around equality, diversity, and the future of Stonewall.
I think Stonewall is a symptom of what's going on in politics generally at the moment. And I think there are 2 or three things that have happened around identity politics in the politics sense of it. The first thing is that if you go back and look at the development of those autonomous groups, so-called, the black civil rights movements in the States, and of course many of these identity groups are modelled at least on that idea in the first place. So the black civil rights movement, then you look at the women's movement, then you look at the lesbian and gay movement. All of those arose because mainstream liberal politics rejected them. So if you look back at the 60s in this country, you look at the Bristol omnibus strike, the omnibus company said, we will not employ black people. The T&G, the union, sided with the bus company. You know, when you look at trying to get equal pay on the agenda of the TUC sided with their male their male members, and so it goes on. So you see the development of these voices as a way of trying to get into liberal politics. And the other side of that, of course, is that on the right, at those early points, the right wasn't interested in those collective voices at all. So they were rejected both by left and right. So that's one bit of the process. I think the second bit of the process is a peculiar idea, back to your point about the teenage rebellion, is that there's this weird thing about choice in the marketplace that we've had now, you know, neoliberal economics, or this very weird idea that you are an individual, or at least it speaks to your individual style if you wear Calvin Klein underwear.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet there are 40 million people who are, somehow that's an individual style choice. And I think the third thing is therapy. I mean, everybody politically now is doing yoga and Pilates. Do you know what I mean? It's all about themselves. It's all happiness, fulfillment. That's no longer a collective concept. It's an individual concept. So when you bring all these things together, what you've got, I think, is a really dangerous cocktail, which makes politics massively individualized and very subjective.
I mean, is it just about the rise of narcissism? I know I read in the Sunday Times this week this statistic, which I thought was astonishing, that in 1950, 12% of people responding to this study agreed with the statement, I'm a very important person. And by the time we reach 1990, that figure has gone up to 80% of people think that, and that's still going. And I suppose
all that stuff about you've really got to value yourself and blah, blah, all that's absolutely fundamentally important.
Yeah.
But my point would be, what are we valuing ourselves for? What is our individuality in the pursuit of? You know, when you're in a relationship with somebody, what you do is you negotiate over 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, a way of living together, which you enjoy jointly, and then perhaps you have kids, and then you have a wider family, and then you have a family network, and then you have friends network. You don't do it in an isolation. You know, this is part of a network of people with whom you interact and in whose happiness you have investment.
Mm.
So that's a collective exercise, it feels to me. Whereas, and certainly that to me is what trade unionism is about, it's what Stonewall is about, it's what all those groups are about. It's about collective happiness. Whereas actually now, to be honest, if people are kind of, you know, fulfilled and, you know, they've got their own identity and they can define their own bit of the planet, that apparently is enough. Well, I reject that. I reject the purpose of that. The purpose of my time in politics is to bring about collective change for the common good. And I'm not painting myself as some saint. I'm not saying, oh God, I'm so selfless. I want a bit of that. You know?
Yeah. Where are you now on the Stonewall issue in terms of how your view of them? Because I have to be honest, I've invited representatives from Stonewall onto my show probably about 15 times so far to defend the positions that they publicly take, and not once have they agreed to do so. I think they've just sort of decided they're going to fight this in this kind of very antagonistic culture war way, which is just to divide the world into good and evil and claim to be on the side of the angels.
I was written to by the former chair of Stonewall and told that I had put myself outside Stonewall.
Well, that's my point. Yeah.
But the point at which that happens is Stonewall's turned itself into a party, hasn't it? Or an organisation that's got a single political line. I think that so the damage is that Stonewall is not really able to say it represents all lesbians and gays and trans people. It can't say that with any credibility, because quite clearly what we warned would happen, we warned them privately that if they did this, this would happen. They have divided the community they're supposed to represent.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. I think the second problem is that they don't clearly have the strategy to get themselves out of that mess. And so every time you see somebody, when they do very rarely stick their head above the parapet, they're not doing it in a way that's attempting to find solutions. I was struck the other day, I would say, and this is off the point, but it's a Labour Party point, but it's aligned. I was struck by Wes Streeting, who is shadow of, I think, education now, or whatever, Home Office, I can't remember. But Wes Streeting, you know, who is a significant figure in the Labour Party and clearly one day would like to be leader, so we see him as a significant player. He made a very distinct attempt, I thought, to get out in front of this argument and say there needs to be a discussion. So I thought that was interesting because that felt to me like the display of some real leadership. And that's part of the problem for Stonewall, is doesn't appear to have that leadership that will find a way through all this. So I think it's in a very difficult position because it will see any solution to this, it will have to see it as a defeat. And that's not politics. Solutions are not defeats. Solutions are movements forward.
Do you feel at all sad about it, though, insofar as, you know, I think Stonewall largely trades off the reputation that it justly earned over many years. I feel like it's trashed its own reputation now, and I would go so far as to say most gay people don't think it represents them. So, I mean, do you feel...
I don't know what the numbers are, but I absolutely share your sadness. I mean, it's, you know, we started it in 1989 through a sort of weird naivety and enthusiasm, really. We didn't know what we were doing, but it turned out doing something very simple, i.e. arguing for equality. We did something that turned out to be tactically and strategically quite intelligent.
Yeah.
But honest to God, we didn't know what we were doing. And if we hadn't done it, somebody else would have done it. I mean, it happened to be us lot. And I feel deeply, deeply sad, not that they've chosen to tackle the issue they've chosen. As I say, I don't really mind if they, you know, it's not up to me whether they lobby or whether they lobby. But what I'm really sad about is this failure to embrace difference, embrace the arguments that need to be had, and find practical ways through in the way that I described with civil partnerships, where, I mean, just to say, if you look at civil partnerships, a really good example where we asked Stonewall asked the gays and the lesbians in 2003, you know, what's most important to you at the moment? And obviously, apart from musical theatre, they said everything that flowed from the fact that our relationships were not legal. So inheritance, all the things I mentioned before. So we looked around and we said, well, I didn't. This is the great Angela Mason, you know, astonishing leader in Stonewall. And they looked around and they said, well, look, there's this civil partnership in Holland and France. They're a weaker. So they developed this idea of civil partnership. And the reason they did it was because they looked at the political landscape and went, well, the government's not going to reform marriage because it's really nervous about this. The church thinks it owns marriage. So in Parliament, the House of Lords, with Christian MPs and the bishops and assholes, we're going to have no support at all. That's going to be really problematic. And thirdly, and most importantly in a way, lesbians thought that marriage was part of the patriarchy and a tool of oppression and didn't want gays to volunteer for it. There wasn't an alliance to build around equal marriage. Now, we could have gone out there and just, you know, equal marriage. What do we want? Equal marriage now. You know, we could have done all that. What would have been the point of doing that? Because what we did with civil partnerships was deliver the benefits and the rights and responsibilities that people actually wanted. So that's the sadness, is that could be done now.
And you can listen to my whole conversation with Simon Fanshawe on my podcast, Free Speech Nation, the podcast, which goes live right at the end of this show. That's at 9 p.m. if you're a new viewer. It's 8 o'clock. You're watching Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Welcome back to the show. So, plenty more to come on Free Speech Nation, but now we're going to get our panel back involved. We've selected some of the best news stories of the week. First up, the NHS has reported 5,500 children are on the waiting list for transgender treatments since lockdown. Senior figures at NHS Trust are concerned the list has grown substantially during lockdown, admitted it was a huge preoccupation for Board of Trustees. The CQC found numerous failings at the clinic after a string of whistleblowers raised concerns that the GIDS fails to properly support vulnerable children and has pushed them towards life-changing sex change treatments. But I mean, I don't know, Nick, what do you think about it? It does feel like these things come and go in waves, and at the moment there is very much a kind of a kind of, well, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, don't they? 5,500 children now. That wouldn't have been the case 10 years ago.
Right, suddenly 5,500 children. It's also gone up massively since lockdown.
Yeah.
And if you read the piece, what it says is that, kids are reading stuff online. Obviously, the pervasive culture is this liberal orthodoxy of, and now it's pushing people to be trans. It's very different from having compassion for an individual trans person versus a culture that kind of pushes people into it. And this is the problem. And this is why ultimately what we need to go back to is a patriarchal Christian theocracy.
Goodness me.
Which is not exactly a club comedy punchline, but it has got a laugh here. So we're doing all right. But
it's a laugh of pity.
Yeah, that's Bantz, guys. It's secretly true. But it's terrible because what's happening is, on a serious note, these doctors are feeling pressured to give kids this life-changing puberty blocks and stuff. Now you shouldn't be a doctor if you feel pressure to do that, because that's you've got to be stronger than that. But it's very troubling because these kids, you're going to have lawsuits, you're going to have suicides, you're going to have all sorts of suffering later on if they transition when they actually shouldn't have.
I think it's very difficult, isn't it? Because a lot of people will make the comparison with, say, attitudes from the past towards homosexuality. And bigots used to say things like, oh, it's just a phase, you'll just grow out of it. And so when we talk about social contagion element of this debate, people say that you're effectively doing the same. But that's not quite true, because we're not talking about kids with gender dysphoria, which is a thing, and that happens among kids. We're talking about the way in which, and particularly among teenage girls, there is a sense in which social contagion really, really does count. I remember when I was a teacher, a lot of the girls were anorexic. Something like 90% of the girls had some kind of eating disorder, and that's not something innate. That is something that has come through this social contagion. What do you think, Liz?
Well, I think you have to look. This is such a horrible subject.
It is. I know. I'm sorry.
You have to look on the bright side for these kids. Is that they're going to be the recipients of major lawsuits when they sue the NHS.
Well, you know what? You joke, but there are already some. Oh yeah, it's already kind of happening because
that's going to put the brake on it.
Well, it will, because I think what's happening is some young people detransition, as they're known as, people like Keira Bell, who made the point that, well, when she went to the gender clinic, she was just affirmed. They just said, oh, you think you're in the wrong body? Then you are. You just are. There was no sense of, let's discuss this, let's try and work out whether, this is something that you should be taking surgery, steps towards surgery,
But Lewis is right, and that's such an American take on it, that they'll be lawyering up. But that is the thing, that's probably why that would probably stop it happening in America to the same degree. We're not quite as litigious, but I do think that will happen.
It's all about the litigation with you. I mean, but that's good. That's another reason why America's the best country in the world.
It is the reason. Because people have to pay a price for what they've done wrong. In this country, it's like, oh, we said we're sorry. That's
Lewis told me in the break, America's the worst country. It's all for show, this.
Oh, maybe him talking to you in the break was all for show. Maybe that wasn't the real Lewis.
Right.
We don't know who the real Lewis Schaefer is. Like, you are many people in one, aren't you? You're an enigma. Yeah. I often think of you as an enigma.
Well, that's the key to comedy, really.
It is, isn't it? I watch you on stage and I think, who is this guy?
Yeah.
I'll never know.
Is he a comedian?
Is he? Well, he makes me laugh.
I'm 26 years old.
Well, I mean...
Really, yeah.
Right. That's how he identifies.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick. Let's move on to another question now. We've been talking about... let's move on to comedy. We've just been talking a bit about comedy. Let's talk about comedy, because after Little Britain was taken off BBC iPlayer, you might remember that in the summer of 2020, there were all sorts of shows that, because of outdated depictions of race and gender, etc., were removed or edited or that kind of thing. I've spoken before about a scene that was taken out of an episode of Fawlty Towers, for instance. Same with Netflix and BritBox, and particularly with Matt Lucas and David Walliams when they blacked up, wore fat suits in Little Britain, of course. Also in their other show. What was their other show? Come Fly With Me. Similar situation there. But they're bringing Little Britain back, although this time they're saying there's going to be edits that better reflect the changes in the cultural landscape over the last 20 years since the show was first made. So in other words, you will be able to watch Little Britain, but certain scenes will have disappeared. However, commentators have been very quick to point out that the show's foray into other isms and phobias appear to have survived the edits. So Walliams' Desiree de Vere is gone, but the Ching Chong Chinaman joke remains. Although I've seen the scene with that joke, and it's obviously mocking a racist. So the target of the joke is it's not a racist joke. It's having a go at racists, which I think is fair game, right?
Well, look, it's getting so hard to even do comedy these days, which is why Lewis has given up trying. But I'm sorry, Lewis. I'm sorry.
He's going to start crying in a minute.
I feel bad, but the comedian part of me has to do it. I'm so sorry.
Well, you know what? You know what's just going to happen? Means I'm going to win.
Yeah, probably.
The more mean you are to him, the more the audience will like him over you. Just be aware of that.
It's not a competition.
And yet you treat it like one.
The point is, it is very hard to comment. I've never actually watched Little Britain. David Williams was nice to me on Britain's Got Talent, so I'm not dissing anyone. But
You've never watched Little Britain?
Never watched it. It's not my thing. It doesn't. But yes, we get into this ridiculous thing where once you start banning some scenes, people are like, well, why aren't you banning the other scenes? So it's absurd, never works. And if these people watched a single episode of Brass Eye, they'd probably be hospitalised immediately.
Oh, they would have
when,
conniptions.
This paedophile's been disguised as a school for 2 weeks, things like that. That's a line from the show. That's not a thing I'm saying. But if you've ever seen things like Brass Eye, in the 90s, comedy was so much more offensive. So, yeah, where's it going to stop? It's not going to work. It's inconsistent.
I mean, Brass Eye is a good example. That would never be commissioned now, of course. But that was offensive at the time. I remember the big sort of the media outrage at the time of Brass Eye, and it was particularly effective because, of course, a lot of what Brass Eye was lampooning was media outrage, and that kind of, it sort of demonstrated the very point that he was trying to make.
Can I add one point that's better than the one I just said? The only thing that bothers me is people getting famous off offensive comedy. Sarah Silverman's done it, Frankie Boyle's done it, to some degree Matt Lucas does it. They get famous off offensive comedy, then they say, oh, now I'm holier than thou, you can't do it, and they go all woke. That really annoys me.
It happens a lot, doesn't it?
Happens a lot, and they pull up the ladder and they say, no more offensive comedy, but they don't give back the money.
That's what they should do, just give back the money.
Give me and Lewis the money,
Yeah,
because we're still out there doing real comedy.
Or the fame. I take the fame.
Do you want to be famous, though, Lewis?
I don't want to be famous because then the attention gets drawn, and then people wonder what I did in America.
People start noticing you, which I think with your lifestyle you don't necessarily want.
No, I don't want that.
No.
I don't want
Although you are getting more and more famous because you keep appearing in these blockbuster movies. Now, Lewis was in Wonder Woman 2.
I would just in the Duke. If you're seeing the Duke, you go out there, you can see the Duke.
You just appear in these various films. So you are, creeping up
I was with
that.
Patrick Dempsey in a film just yesterday.
Were you? You're just hanging out with Tom Cruise and Cher. It's incredible, isn't it?
It's incredible.
But to get back to this point, I mean, are you a fan of Little Britain? Have you seen those scenes? Did they offend you when you first watched them?
Of course they didn't offend me because I'm not some fat black woman.
But okay, I know
if I was a fat black woman, I might be offended.
Well, I think that...
But that Ching Chong thing was against racism.
It was against racism,
and that offended me because I'm a racist.
Okay, let's not pursue
that. Funny? Was that funny?
That was very funny.
I love the way that Lewis then has to get validation. Was that funny?
Yes, funny.
They laughed. It was funny. It was funny.
Nick is can I just interrupt you?
No.
Nick is a real comedian.
Nick is a fantastic comedian.
No, he is a real comedian. Plus, he's an interesting guy. Where I'm just odd.
No, you're a real comedian. I'm transitioning into serious commentary. You're like the real hardcore comedian.
Yeah, but I think just to say, Lewis, you did make a very interesting point there, insofar as the Chinaman joke was very much a joke against racists, and yet the depiction of the large black woman in the fat suit, that feels a bit like just poking fun at a large black woman, doesn't it? Or that's the way it's often interpreted.
What if it was a Jewish guy in a fat suit? How would you feel?
How would you feel about that if it was someone?
I don't know why.
I think the problem is that all acting and all comedy is making fun of somebody. You got to have somebody to make fun of, Yeah,
I mean, I suppose you could say that in Little Britain there's the character of David, I think.
The gay man.
The gay man, and it's such a gay stereotype. But I don't think the target. I don't think for a start, Matt Lucas is gay.
Were you the only gay guy in the village?
Was I the only gay guy? Yeah. Absolutely. No, but that's not the point of it. Like, I don't watch that and think, oh, that's what Matt Lucas thinks gay people are like. Well, for starters, he's gay. He's gay for one thing. Right. But I don't see that as being, because that was obviously a joke about a gay man who thinks he's oppressed. And everyone in the village is totally fine with it.
In a sense, we've already lost because we're discussing it in this serious detail.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a ridiculous show where people projectile vomit, and we're discussing it on Free Speech Nation. Is that relevant? You know what I mean? So we've kind of, because it's got to the point we almost can't do comedy because we're just stuck discussing it in this perpetual...
But we can still in the clubs, you can still do whatever you want in the clubs, and they just won't get on TV, that's all.
Right.
And I think you're going to get more interesting comedy by going out to see live comedy. I think that's the way it's got to be, isn't it?
Yeah, but then the audience, to some degree, the audience, of course, they're influenced by the culture, and they're tense about what they can laugh at as well, to some degree.
All right. Well, look, we're going to move on now. Yes. Think of your worst idea and times it by 10. A North Carolina schools superintendent has apologised for a mock slave auction, wait for it, in which white middle schoolers pretended to sell their black classmates. So no, when we're talking about Little Britain and that kind of stuff, and these are comedians doing comedy, this was, I can't think of how this what thought process led to people thinking that this was okay amongst the kids?
And
did you see this?
He did it straight after Hitler Week as well. That was the really bad thing. That joke came from one of our producers, so he'll be pleased that did quite well. Go on, Lewis.
Lewis, what do you think about the mock slave auction?
I think people are capable of coming up with what seems like a good idea at the time.
Well,
that didn't seem like a good idea.
That's
Slave
not,
auctions, guys.
Clearly not a good idea, you know. But unless I mean,
it must have been for educational purposes.
Well, no, I'm thinking about this.
Yes, it was for educational purposes.
Is that what it was? Well, I mean, how could it be?
It didn't say in the article, to be fair. We're guessing.
I have to say that the article is quite vague.
It's ambiguous.
And I can't work out, is it a misjudged joke among friends?
Do you know what my guess was? It's a teacher trying to make a point and say, hey, kids, let's do this today. And they just haven't thought anything through.
Right. Maybe.
Right?
Maybe.
They're trying to make a point about slavery and how it was. That's my guess. Because why else would it happen?
Because you don't need to do that to teach kids about slavery and the horrors of slavery.
You've been a teacher. Did you do any slave auctions?
I didn't, actually, as it happens. But it's a sort of baseline.
I can't prove that.
I can't prove that I didn't.
Outside of work?
I think that is a sort of baseline thing as a teacher. Don't do any slave auctions. I think that's sort of teaching 101, basically. Anyway, let's move on to another question. This is a question here that we had in... OK, should celebrities stay off social media for their own good? Well, I mean, I always think celebrities should stay off social media, but this is specifically about Jacqueline Wilson, the Tracy Beaker author. She says that writing in today's culture is slightly like walking a tightrope, because anybody can say something in the most innocent way, and then down in print it can have very different meanings. And this is Jacqueline Wilson's comments come after the Free Speech Union blasted one of her latest novels, which is a reimagining of the classic Magic Faraway Tree, saying that classic works of children's literature should not be rewritten to make them more politically correct. Now, this is very interesting to me. So Jacqueline Wilson seems a bit confused about this. On the one hand, she's saying, you know, she is walking a tightrope as a novelist. At the same time, she's rewritten this text to make it more appropriate for today's audiences. Isn't there a kind of contradiction there?
Yeah, it's like someone's going to rewrite her Tracy Beaker things.
Well, I'm sure.
Right.
Because whatever she writes today, ultimately, in 50 years' time, you know, this is the strange thing about the woke movement and the woke left generally, is that they seem to be under this illusion that we've got through all these thousands of years of humanity, and suddenly they've come up with all the answers, and they're perfectly right, and no one's ever going to judge them in the future. No one's ever going to look back and say, what a bunch of idiots pulling down statues and trying to have people arrested for using the wrong pronouns and stuff. And of course they will. In fact, that's probably going to happen in about 15 years. They're going to look out of date, aren't they?
Boringly, the book seemed fine to me. The idea she was updating the Enid Blyton book, she was just making it with more modern characters, she said.
Right.
It doesn't seem to be a massive problem to me. She was very tepid in her comments on borderline unsupportive about J.K. Rowling. She said it's sad for her because she's done so much for children's literature, but she definitely didn't support her. So I hated that.
Well, that's not good, because, yes, it's sad for her that she's getting death and rape threats online.
Right.
You can go a bit further and condemn it, can't you?
It's a very lukewarm sort of support, so that was terrible. So she obviously is a bit woke. So, but as for social media, I have no great insight. It's a poison chalice, isn't it? You do well, you say things that get you an audience, but they'll all be used against you later. A bit like this show.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I say on this is going to be dredged up from the archives.
We were talking about this on Headliners last night, because Nick and I were on Headliners, which is the late-night paper preview show every night, 11 o'clock. On GBNews, you should watch it. But Nick said to me in the break about, you know, because he was being very controversial last night, I have to say, and it's just everything that you say now is committed to film. It's out there, it's online, it's recorded, someone's got it on their hard drive somewhere.
Right.
If you ever became a big celebrity like Lewis, in about, say, 10 years...
Or even a medium
celebrity, then people would dredge this up and they would destroy... I have enough on you to take you down.
I know.
I can completely destroy you,
and I've said it all live on national TV. Some of the stuff I said on your show last time was awful.
Yeah.
I know. That's my worry. At the moment, no one cares. I don't, you know, I'm not famous, so I can say anything. But yeah, it'll all be used against me.
But in a way...
And Lewis, even worse. He's had to flee his own country. You just admitted.
You did. But in a way, with Lewis, it's different, because, you know, we're not talking about private WhatsApp messages or anything like that, because you just say all the worst things out loud, you know, just whenever you like. So it's right there.
I think the key thing is just to say whatever you're going to say, and at some point it'll be derided, and at other points you'll be carried around the room as a hero.
Exactly.
You said this, so you should say whatever you want to say. Like, I was so right about the COVID thing. And
you turned out to be right, did you?
Turned out to be right. I was right about Madeleine McCann. I was.
You know what, though, Lewis?
You're on a hot streak.
Lewis,
and I took the hit.
You take the hit because you say these controversial things, but sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong. But here's the point. Why does it matter? Why can't people be allowed to make mistakes? You know? Why can't it be that sometimes you try a joke and it doesn't work and it offends people, and you think about it and you think, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Why do you have to be condemned for it? Why is there no sense of redemption? Why is there no sense that people can move on?
Because we don't live in a Christian culture anymore. Sorry.
Is that what it is? Is that what it is?
No.
Do you think that's right? We need to bring back Christianity?
I don't know. Is that the question you were asking before?
I have no idea what I was asking.
He said there's no forgiveness.
There's no forgiveness.
That's my point.
There's no forgiveness. We're in a time of no forgiveness. But there will be a time of forgiveness. Everything will be all right in the future. Don't worry about it. Everything's going to be all right.
You think
it'll be all right for a short period of time, and then there'll be no forgiveness again. You know, it's like this woman, this Jacqueline Wilson, who wrote this book, and they describe one of the things that she had changed, which is somebody with a boy said in the first book, I'm not going to clean up because that's a girl's job.
Yes.
Right?
That was in the Enid Blyton book.
Right, Enid Blyton book.
Yeah.
So she made it so where the boy said that, and then the boy was sort of humiliated for saying it.
Yes.
Right? But the truth is, that's not true. Nowadays, no boy would say, I'm a boy, I can't clean up.
Right, men are cleaner than women, in my experience.
Yes, so in this country, too.
Sorry, guys.
No, you didn't say that as a joke. That's totally true,
It's
though.
true.
It's totally true. I've known so many women here, and they're by and large, they're far messier. You see women like this, they're totally put together in public.
This is just a total awful stereotype. This is like...
No, it isn't. It comes from personal experience.
Okay.
It's his lived experience.
That's okay.
Lived experience from the...
Thanks, Lewis. So your lived experience is that women are dirty?
I'm not saying they're all dirty. Yes, in this country, yes.
Okay, fine. Well, I wish we had some way to verify this with some kind of procedure or something.
If I ever got invited back to a woman's house, I'd be able to prove it.
Yes. But unfortunately, that experiment will never yield results. So anyway, look, we're going to go to a break. Lewis,
sorry.
I'm going to go to... this is for your own good, by the way, because you're going to say something that's going to get you in a lot of trouble. So I'm going to break to save your career. OK, so after the break on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be debating if the long-awaited online safety bill is actually any good, and we're going to be looking at more of the viral social media videos doing the rounds. Anybody call for a lift? Oh, looks dodgy. Don't go anywhere.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. The online safety bill has been passed through Parliament this week after concerns were raised about the widespread damage it can cause within a short space of time. The government stated internet users are one step closer to a safer online environment. But is that true? Spike's Deputy Editor Fraser Myers has spoken out about the bill's promotion of the term free speech. In particular, in one of his recent articles, he noted that we are now a country with the most strictly regulated and censored internet of any liberal democracy. I'm delighted to say, here we have Fraser Myers joining me here. Fraser, thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Now then, I want to talk about this because I think a lot of people don't know. Now, obviously, the Online Safety Bill has passed through Parliament. It's been rumbling on for quite a while now. There have been various modifications to it. And they are telling us, the government is saying, this is going to enhance our free speech protections online. Is that true?
Absolutely not. This idea that it's going to protect free speech has come about maybe in the past week or so. This bill has been in the making for 5 years. I mean, if you think about the Online Safety Bill, it used to be called Online Harms.
Yes.
But the main harm that they're trying to tackle is psychological harm. That is, people being offended. That's what this bill sets out really to prevent, and that necessarily is going to have an impact on free speech.
Because I'm confused about this, because in early drafts of the bill, they were talking about sanctioning legal but harmful speech, and they used the phrase legal but harmful, which I find quite chilling as a phrase, actually, because who gets to decide? Am I right in thinking they're kind of smuggling that phraseology in the back door again?
So it's interesting that phrase doesn't appear in the bill, but it appears in all of the government's press releases. So something like it is what we can expect. The harms that the government are going to censor haven't yet been decided. They will appear before Parliament.
Yes.
But once Parliament approves that, then the minister will have the right. The Culture Minister, at the moment that's Nadine Dorries, but it could be anyone in the future, will have the right to introduce new harms as they are invented or as they appear. And all of the big tech platforms have a duty to report emerging harms, as they call it, to the government.
So what this does effectively is it means that Ofcom end up regulating the internet. And they're quite severe penalties for social media tech giants who don't remove content of this kind, right?
Yeah, so if they fail to comply with Ofcom, there can be massive fines of up to 10% of turnover for these big tech giants, and potentially executives can be put in jail for 2 years.
But doesn't that just mean they're going to censor everything?
Exactly. So that's not going to happen. Mark Zuckerberg is not going to stand up against the government for your right to free speech. It means that they're going to proactively censor things so as to avoid being fined by the government or getting in trouble with Ofcom. They will be more than happy to comply with these rules, and they will zealously, enforce free speech restrictions in order to avoid getting through this process.
Have the government at all addressed this point that if we're saying that the government of the day gets to decide what is harmful, what is offensive, are there any protections in place for a future government, which is perhaps a bit more pernicious, to decide that criticism of the government is harmful or whatever?
I don't think there are any protections in this. I mean, the way the government is trying to sell this, as you mentioned earlier, is that it strengthens free speech. Their argument is that it won't be up to big tech to decide what can be censored or not. They don't get to decide what types of speech are permissible and not. But in many ways, the big tech is still enforcing this. It's just the government is deciding on a framework. So it doesn't really make that much of a difference.
OK, because they are saying, because there have been a lot of complaints about the partisan nature of online censorship. And so effectively, Facebook or Twitter or whoever says, we don't like gender-critical feminists, so we'll just blitz their accounts, which they do often, even if they've said nothing offensive at all, so just about a matter of opinion. But the government is claiming that this will actually redress that problem. Is that right?
They are claiming that. I don't buy it at all. One thing the government is saying that sounds in its favour is that there will be a right to appeal when posts are taken down. Now, that is something new. But I don't believe that the government is on such a different page as big tech. I mean, at the end of the day, it's responding to the problem of there being so much big tech censorship and then adding a law that's going to increase all of that censorship.
Well, because people often say that, these are private companies, they can censor whoever they like. We've got no, if they ditch you for whatever reason, that's their business. But doesn't this bill mean that there's now going to be a kind of collaboration between big tech and the state, and therefore it is censorship in the oldest definition of the term?
That's right. It's just state censorship that's outsourced to private companies.
Right.
And, I've never bought into this argument that just because Facebook and Twitter are private companies that they should decide who gets to say what. I mean, this
So why not? Why do you think that?
Because I think, these large social networks have become like the modern day public square. They are the place where we do most of our, political debating, campaigning, things like that.
Yep.
And if you're cut out from Facebook, cut out from Twitter or YouTube, that's absolutely devastating to you, to your ability to interact with not just the online world, but with real world politics.
And what about the government's argument that they say, well, this bill is going to help to clean up the internet of all those sort of terrible illegal things such as paedophilia and that kind of thing?
Well, this is a very sneaky aspect of the bill because it essentially it conflates things that are already illegal with things that are harmful and not illegal, or things that it considers to be harmful.
Yes.
So it says, on the one hand, we're going to deal with terrorism, knife crime, child abuse, all that kind of thing, while smuggling in this much more pernicious aspect, which is to get rid of harmful speech.
Because you can see why that might be effective, because everyone opposes those horrible things, but they are already illegal. And if you're putting them in the same bracket as offensive speech, and just that strikes me as a bit underhand.
Well, one of the problems with this bill, as it's been developing over the years, is that every time there is a scandal, something new gets added to it. It really is a massive bill that's trying to do all things at once. So it's almost as if I said to you, haven't you noticed that there's lots of crime that happens outside? So let's have an outdoor safety bill, and we're going to throw every single problem we can imagine. And when someone comes up with a new problem, it then gets added to this bill. So it is a real mess as a piece of legislation. It conflates all kinds of things, from serious things that are already criminal to ordinary speech that is just going to be deleted.
Yes.
It's a huge problem.
And what is the solution? Is it the case that there is sufficient pushback within Parliament against this bill, or are both sides of the House singing from the same hymn sheet?
They're singing from the same hymn sheet, as you'd imagine. Labour says it doesn't go far enough.
Of course they do.
Because it doesn't specifically mention Russian propaganda and disinformation.
OK, I see.
So that's
we're not going to... So in other words, the bill is going to...
It's going to pass very comfortably. Everyone, unfortunately, across the political spectrum, there is, no appetite for supporting free speech.
So then how do we address it? Because do we leave it to groups like the Free Speech Union to push back? Are there many people who are going to push back, and how effective can that possibly be?
I think it is up to all of us to sort of push back. I think we need to raise awareness about this bill, for starters. I think a lot of people don't know it's happening, or if they know that it's happening, they think it is just addressing, scammers and fraudsters and terrorists and things like that. I think, we need to really push back against this before the internet becomes too cleansed and sanitised for us to even be able to have our say.
But it is also appealing to people's better natures in a way, because, a lot of people think, well, if you have these horrible people online saying these horrible things, wouldn't the world be a better place if we didn't have that? Wouldn't the world be a better place if we didn't have disinformation, fake news? People are worried about these things, and they think this might be the solution. Or maybe it's being offered as the kind of solution.
Yeah, but it's, it's always a false solution. Censorship is never the answer to our problems. I mean, if you think about something like disinformation, who do we allow to decide what is disinformation or not? Now, at the moment, the government is saying, well, we're going to stop big tech from deciding, and we're going to decide what is disinformation.
Right.
But facts change. Things change all the time. So think of two examples recently. The theory as to whether COVID leaked from a lab, I don't know if that's true. You don't know if that's true. No one knows. But 2 years ago, that was considered a conspiracy theory and was banned from Facebook and various other platforms.
Yes.
Now it's considered plausible, and it's believed by, at least plausible by the Biden administration, by the UK government. Or if you take something like the Hunter Biden laptop scandal.
Yes.
That was
Do you want to just explain what happened there? Because I think a lot of people didn't know about it.
Yeah, so this was a huge expose by the New York Post in America, one of America's oldest newspapers. It's kind of a fun tabloid newspaper.
Yeah.
And it found all this compromising information stored on Hunter Biden's laptop, the son of Joe Biden, during the last election. Incredibly compromising, and it did drag in the then presidential candidate Joe Biden as well.
Yes.
And Facebook and Twitter censored it. They censored it on the grounds that it was misinformation, disinformation, possibly, even just Russian propaganda. Lots of security services wrote an open, ex-spies wrote an open letter saying this was Russian propaganda.
Yes.
It's now very clear that it's real and it's true. So
and the government hasn't denied it, has it?
No,
or didn't at the time.
Biden never denied it at the time. Their campaign never denied it.
I thought that was particularly shocking, because at that time, this was an article, as you say, New York Post. It's not some blog on the corner of the internet. This is an established newspaper that was founded by Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah.
This is a big publication. They had their account locked, and you couldn't even share the link.
Yeah.
There was some program was put in, so you couldn't even pass the link on. Isn't that election interference by big tech?
It is. I don't think that the story would have been enough to sway the election, but the fact that they were interfering in that way was really alarming.
Yes.
So, we do obviously need to do something to get a handle on big tech and what it's censoring and what it allows, and those are very real issues. But the problem is our government is looking at this and saying, well, big tech isn't doing enough to censor.
Right. So they're going about it the wrong way.
Yeah, they're saying, look at this crazy Wild West where you can say anything on the internet, and now everyone knows that that's not true.
Well, also, I mean, we can all agree that we can't trust Silicon Valley to censor in a non-partisan way.
Of course.
But can we possibly trust the government? I mean, isn't that the implication of this bill? You can't trust them, but you can trust us. We'll make the right decisions.
I mean, the government is always going to say it's always going to take a sort of hands-off approach. So it will, it will come up with broad categories like disinformation, harassment, those kinds of things, and then leave it to Ofcom. But I mean, so it's not going to be politically partisan. It's not going to, we're not going to find, Labour supporters censored or something like that in favour of the Tories. But at the end of the day, it's going to be kind of culturally partisan because we know that's how these institutions work. We know the kinds of views that populate the people who work for the government, the people who work in Silicon Valley.
Yes.
We know that there's a right thing you're allowed to say about trans issues or race issues and a wrong thing that you can't say about those issues, no matter how legitimate. So that's inevitable, really.
So what's the solution?
The solution is to keep making the arguments for free speech, to remind people that it's censorship is the real harm here. If we lose out on hearing things, then that's a greater loss to society than hearing offensive things.
Excellently put. Couldn't agree more. Fraser Myers, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be going through your unfiltered dilemmas. Plus, Devil's Advocate is going to be Dixon versus Schaefer. But what will they be arguing about? We shall see. Before all that, so let's take a look at what's coming up after this.
On Mark Dolan tonight in The Big Question, should Britain ban smoking? Is it time to stub out the nation's filthy habits? We'll speak to John Dicey from the legendary Alan Carr Smoking Clinic. Is being rich morally wrong? My Mark Meets guest is renowned American entrepreneur Derek Bullen, author of In Defense of Wealth. Plus my all-star panel and alternative news headlines tonight featuring Hugh Grant. And in my big opinion, someone needs to make America great again. See you at 9.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the part of the show called Devil's Advocate, where our panellists discuss one of the burning issues of the day. And this week, our panel are talking about whether comedians make better leaders. I should imagine this is in relation to Ukraine, of course, has a comedian as a leader. But is it the case And Boris Johnson's been known to crack a few jokes, hasn't he, from time to time? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? First, arguing that comedians do make better leaders, it's Nick Dixon.
Thank you, everyone. I've got notes because they give me this stuff very late, and it's basically doing new material live on national TV. And the problem is with comedy, if it doesn't work, it's just a person saying horrible things for no reason. So I'll give it a go. So I'm going to say that comedians do make good leaders. Now, obviously, the idea of Lewis Schaefer was any kind of power terrifies me, but but when I thought about it overall, I think they do make better leaders because I've looked at it. I worked in... I mean, Zelensky's the obvious example. He was a comedian. Now he's a great leader and the perfect human being. But sorry, that's for one person sort of sniggering a little bit of that. I just put that in to show I'm not a Russian spy. But anyway, I've worked in comedy 10 years, more now. Comedians, they'd be perfect as politicians. You know what I mean? Because they're totally ruthless, number one. They'll stab you in the back or the front. They travel around the country driving around for not much money. They don't know much about politics, which probably helps. They all hate the Conservative Party and all Conservative ideas, which qualifies them for a job in the Conservative Party. And, stick it to my own alleged side. They'd also make great world leaders, comedians, because they don't mind bombing. That's a pun. Or killing, in some cases, like me on stage is a term meaning we do well. I don't kill people. Okay, comedians will love that bit at home. They'll be like, that was gold. Overall, yes, and I have to say overall that comedians could be world leaders because I think I could do it. Many people on Twitter want me to be Prime Minister, and I think I'll set a great example. You know, I relate to the people, I do well in the Red Wall, and I'm leading the way by housing 6 refugees. And the fact that they're all Russian is neither here nor there. Thank you very much, that's my bit.
Nick Dixon, everyone. And now, arguing that comedians do not make better leaders, it's Lewis Schaefer.
I don't have to have notes. There's a saying that when a comedian tires of comedy, he goes into politics. And when a politician tires of politics, he goes into comedy. Okay? The problem with that is that when you're a comedian and you become serious, no one wants to see any of the stuff that you've done before. So it's completely wasted. So you should never let a comedian become a politician if they were good, if they were shit.
Lewis, language. Okay. This is pre-Watershed. I would like to apologise for anyone who was offended by the poor language coming out of Lewis Schaefer's mouth.
Why he couldn't be in politics.
I think that...
Maybe I should have had my notes.
No, listen. I think this, you know, your faux pas there, Lewis, has made the point that comedians are not to be trusted and that perhaps I shouldn't keep inviting them onto the show because invariably they get me into trouble.
It wasn't as bad as the other one when I said...
Don't say it! Goodness me. This is what I have to put up with. Anyway,
Am I done?
You're done, Lewis. You're done. I think we've heard more than enough from you. Now, look.
Hang on. I must have won that one. I must have won that one. He didn't even finish.
Right, Lewis.
Not fine.
Lewis completely self-sabotaged. Look, he's very upset about it. Lewis, are you actually crying? No, he is a good actor. It's very good. Look, we're going to move on anyway. This is the part of the show where we dedicate this part of the show to the world of social media. Of course we do. And first up, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has showcased some of the worst behaviour that humanity has to offer, but it is important to remember the good too. This was the welcome 2 refugees got at their new school in Italy. So we can see there, I mean, that is very heartwarming. So the idea of the other kids sort of welcoming them in. Nick, do you have any thoughts on this video?
All I see is a load of people wearing masks for no reason, guys.
Nick, this is your monomania coming back.
No.
Can't you just enjoy the beautiful scene?
It was a touching moment. I thought, I'll go on Twitter to see how people are going to ruin this. And immediately someone had said, yeah, it's nice to get in that welcome, but don't you think this will cause some unintentional trauma for the children? So it was already, I know. But
this is the case with social media all the time. Someone's got to find the bad take, haven't they? That's actually a lovely...
It is lovely because it's only 2 of them. Wait till like 10 people show up per class in Fairlawn School in East Forest Hill.
Well, then
you'll see there won't be any applauding. They'll be like, get these kids out of here.
Then people are going to become incredibly right-wing all of a sudden. And but
wait till these kids grow up and they're just beautifully thin, hardworking. they've got clean flats, and the English women have like incredible competition, and they're not going to like it.
Always goes back to that with Lewis. Always goes back to that.
He's off the rails towards it.
He does.
You should book him for half the show.
I just think, some...
goes back.
I mean, we often show sort of funny clips and sort of... But I think it's nice to see something that's genuinely quite touching. And, it's humanitarian. I think it's really important. Anyway, let's return now to a theme that I was talking about earlier. This is the swimmer Leah Thomas, who obviously caused a great deal of controversy and received a lot of hostility from the crowd, as well as praise. So it's been quite complicated. She won the 500 freestyle in Atlanta, but this was her reception when giving a speech at the pool after the win. Now, it isn't entirely clear, but she was being heckled during that speech. Someone was shouting out, "It's a man, it's a man." There was booing, there was this kind of thing. It became very kind of a panto. And, I've spoken about this earlier. I think it's absolutely the case that people are going to be angry at the injustice of a male-bodied athlete participating in women's sports. At the same time, on a human level, I always feel bad for people who are the subject of heckling. Yeah. But then,
I regret doing it now.
Yeah, you should.
I shouldn't have gone there. But wasn't that actually Parker Posey? Is that her name?
I don't know who...
shouting. Yeah, there's a clip of her shouting, "It's a man."
Oh, it could well be. I don't know who it was.
She was at one of these things.
Okay. And again, I have sympathy with it's unfair. It just is unfair. And, I think there's a reason why people would get angry, why people would feel they would have to shout.
Yeah, I already used up my jokes on this in the first section. They weren't that good.
No, they weren't.
So I'm not going to say them twice.
But I would say
But I will. I'll say his jokes.
The thing about this is, though, and I hear Leah Thomas talking about participating in the event, and a lot of people are saying, look, this is not Leah Thomas's fault because, the rules say that Leah Thomas can participate. On the other hand, I sort of think, why would you? I mean, wouldn't there be some sense of shame at winning, effectively cheating? Is that not what's going on here?
Well, it is kind of cheating. I mean, I feel for him, her.
Yes.
Okay? You feel for her. She wants to be a girl, and she...
No, I'm not talking about the trans issue. I'm just saying,
yeah.
I support...
But what's the extension of that? The extension of that is she wants to be a girl, so why can't she play with the girl?
Well, so this is...
Well, because it ends women's sport.
This is the point, isn't it? Insofar as I understand that...
It hurts other women, but then that's not her business because she's now a woman. You, by calling her a woman without any modifiers on it,
yeah, but
you are playing along with it. I'm going to say you made a mistake.
Okay.
You are the problem because in the other section you said the NHS is calling her a woman.
Yes.
And that's wrong. But you called her a woman.
What I will say is that Leah Thomas is a biological male who identifies as a woman. And I think,
why do you call her a her?
Because out of courtesy, like I say, I don't mind.
She didn't call you up and say, "Listen, Andrew."
No, I don't know Leah Thomas, but that doesn't bother me. I will use people's pronouns however they like.
But then
that's
other
fine.
people are hearing this. This is the last time I'm going to be on TV. Other people are hearing this, and they're hearing the television calling her a her.
Yeah, absolutely. And but likewise, I support anyone's right to call her a him. I don't believe in this idea. No one can police the way in which we address each other or the words that we individually choose to use. And so that's my issue with this. I think, as I said earlier, I think anyone has the right to identify however they like, use whatever terms they like about themselves, but they can't force other people to use those terms about them. I'll give you an example. So if I were to get married to my partner and say, "This is my husband," and I demand you call him my husband, and you're a Christian fundamentalist, and you think, well, no, that's against my religion, so I'm not going to call that person your husband. I can't then say, well, I'm going to get you arrested for that. Because that's your choice, it's your individual choice.
You're marrying a man.
Oh, sorry, I forgot about your rampant homophobia, Lewis. I shouldn't have mentioned that. I knew I would trigger something eventually.
Yeah,
Nick,
the thing, I mean, there's a lot of... He's talking about compelled speech, as Jordan Peterson would call it, but...
No, I'm not talking about...
No, I am.
Oh,
he is, and I am.
Let Nick call...
Let me get you out of trouble here, Liz, because like you said, this is your last appearance, but I'm a... I'll get myself in trouble instead. I mean, look, Leah Thomas was something like 457th as a man, and now she's first as a woman, or he or she. So it's not ideal.
Yes.
And then, of course, in the Christian theocracy, there won't be women's sports, so that'll solve it.
Yes.
Because men will just win anyway. I mean, if there was only just sport, let's just, for argument's sake, I'm helping out Lewis by getting myself in more trouble. If
Yes,
there was
you
only
are.
sport and no categories, men would win all of it anyway. So
Well, do you know-
the whole thing, one argument is the whole thing's artificial. So why not just have sport and just let anyone have a go?
That's what they used to have, though, Nick. The reason why...
Some things are actually not categorised, it's just that only men compete in them.
The reason why women's sports, the reason why sports were segregated into male and female is precisely so that there could be women athletes. Because if you don't have that segregation, men will win everything, and that's what you want.
Yeah,
ultimately, you want men to win everything.
Yeah, just men.
So reactionary. Anyway, let's move on. Another fun one. This is what do you think of when you ask for a pizza? Do you think of cheese, tomato? Well, OK, a man in America was left underwhelmed when he ordered a pizza with bacon on it, but when it turned up, he realised he'd got closer to a bacon sandwich. Is that an image there?
This is it. It's just, and by the way, this is what Lewis is calling the best country in the world. That's what they came up with. That's in America, Lewis.
And what is that? Is
Own
a
it.
that's the pizza. No, look, I don't know why this made the news. Just a dodgy pizza, but that's not a pizza. I don't think that is a
They
pizza.
left off the cheese and tomato topping because he didn't specify them.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. They just gave him some.
Is
bread
that
with
how
bits of
literal-minded you people are?
No, it's not literal-minded. It's just a sign that you can get what you want, but you have to ask for it. And generally speaking, Americans ask for stuff.
Yes,
we're not like British people who sit there cowering and saying, "I'll just accept whatever is given to me."
No, but look, if I go into a pizza store and say I want a bacon pizza, and they don't put cheese and tomato because I didn't specify I wanted cheese and tomato, that's trolling, isn't it? That's them. They're deliberately trolling you there at that point.
No, do you know what it is? First of all, pizza comes from Italy, and the original pizza didn't necessarily have tomato paste on it. There was lots of different varieties of pizza. It could have just had cheese plain on there, and I know when it's an Italian person. So maybe
Lewis Schaefer on the history of pizza, everyone.
Or you could say I look like an Italian guy. I look a bit like Robert De Niro. So
you do a bit, actually. I can see that.
I do, yeah. So what it is, it also is like maybe it's a sign of the times that we don't deserve cheese.
We don't deserve cheese. Only the biggest debates on here on Free Speech Nation. Finally, is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's caravan, but not as you would expect. Have a look at this. Not sure about this. Have a look.
There's no way. There's no way.
OK, I'm not sure what's going on here. Nick, do you have any thoughts on this? I'm very confused by
Not
that.
as funny as Lewis, but it's someone towing a caravan on some sort of scooter.
OK.
I believe.
Has this just gone viral? This.
It's more of a visual gag. It's one of those. You don't want to over-explain it.
Well, I don't understand it. I don't know what's going on.
No,
there.
literally, that's all is what you saw.
Oh, OK.
There's nothing more to it. There's no subtext. You're too smart, Andrew. You're looking for something.
I am looking for.
Is it transphobic? There's nothing.
I'm looking for some. You've got to understand, Nick. I see the world through this culture war prism. This is all I can do now.
You're like, who's upset by this? Yeah,
exactly.
No one. It's just someone on a sort of. It could be a mobility scooter. It's some sort of scooter, and they're pulling Andrew a caravan along.
I see.
And normally it would be a car, so it's incongruous.
Yeah. And
Okay.
it could have been.
I understand it. I think I'm understanding it now. I don't know why it's important.
And it took place in Wales.
OK. Why does that go viral? Then? Why doesn't like a soliloquy from Hamlet go viral? Something a bit more upmarket.
To be or not to be was quite viral.
It was.
That was very clever.
Yes,
I said that.
That was good. And Zelensky quoted it in his address to Parliament. Anyway, we're going back to politics, so let's not do that. Look, we've got some time left, and we've got a moment to talk through your unfiltered dilemmas that you've very kindly sent in. So let's see what we've got here. Some of these can be a bit risque. This is the first one from Saskia. Saskia says, last night, I found a phone in a bar that was unlocked. I searched for mum in contacts and then texted her to say I'm pregnant before handing it into security. How good is that? How evil is that, Saskia? I think that you are the devil incarnate. That's
when
not
I hear
right.
that kind of thing, to be honest, I think all of Lewis Schaefer's views about women are correct, actually. Stuff he was telling me in the break, I thought it was horrible, but now
But that's instantaneous malice, isn't it? The first thing that she thought to do... I'm sorry, Saskia, I know you're watching, but, you know, you're not a good person. You know, do you think that's right?
Well, it could be maybe the mother wanted to have a
But then it's very disappointing.
It's disappointing, exactly.
So
I think, why would you do... Well, but she immediately went to mum, didn't she? She immediately started
Yeah.
I just think there's something inherently wrong with that. I think that's the sort of behaviour...
You almost said with women, but you just said that at the last minute.
No, I didn't say... I was going to say women. I was just thinking, that's the sort of thing that the Antichrist would do. You know?
He's gay. He doesn't think women are evil.
We doesn't even have to deal with them at all.
Yeah, that's right.
I've absolutely got to put a stop to this. Why do I do it to myself? I invite these people on week after week and they just jeopardise everything. Anyway, we've got another dilemma now. This has come in from Joe in Braintree. Joe says, I bought a hot wings bucket today, which is meant to contain 20 wings, but I only got 18. Is it worth me going back to argue for some money back? I don't know about this. You see, this happened to me the other day in the Chinese, and they didn't include one of the items, but it was such a small item, I thought, I don't want to go back there and sort of do it. And it looks like I'm being petty then as well, because they're very nice and I don't want to...
This is the second incorrect fast food item we've done. This show is really changing.
We're moving more into that sort of culinary world. I think that's important.
I've got nothing on this.
What? Okay, Lewis.
I'll say, first of all, it took place in Braintree, okay?
Yeah.
Which is in Essex.
Essex, that's right, yes.
You got to just eat it. Not eat it, but it's...
You've got to take what you're given in Braintree.
You got to take what you're given.
You're lucky to get anything in Braintree.
Hang on, you just said that we shouldn't, where English people were cowed and we don't...
They're coward, but I'm saying for these people, if I was in New York, I'd say, you know...
You'd sue. You would sue them.
Of course.
For the loss of the two chicken wings.
And like I said before, that's what makes America a great country, is people sue.
Yeah.
And
then they don't give... Then they give you the correct number of wings.
They give you something extra.
Yeah,
basically.
they do. They do.
And they've learned a lesson and they become better people.
And as it is, I'm sure that this chicken seller in Braintree won't learn his lesson. He will continue to undersell people. And yeah, it's terrible, absolutely terrible. Let's move on to the last one from Fraser in Peterborough, which I think is a nicer place than Braintree, isn't it?
No,
Peterborough.
I don't think it is.
No? Oh, I thought it was quite nice.
I'm still owed money from a guy in Peterborough.
Yes, but I would say, Lewis, this is not the forum to settle your scores.
I got the last
Let me read this out, Lewis. It's on the screen and people want me to read it. I heard my neighbours having very loud sex last night, then found out this morning that the man that lives there is actually away for the weekend. Clearly something naughty is going on. Do I say something? It might have been a film. It might have been the TV. What do you think, Nick? What would you do in that situation?
It's also un-Christian. I can't stand it.
You just think it's depraved, don't you?
It's the degeneracy of this country. Lewis was right. No, you can't, it's tricky. You can't really say... Well,
it's not your business, is it?
Hang on, who's doing what? Because you've got...
Well, they're just hearing it. And
there
they
is
think
a phrase, bros before something I'm not allowed to say.
Don't say that word.
So in that, they should tell them.
I think...
But in some ways, you've got to mind your own business, so I'm conflicted.
Look, I just think, whatever else we've done tonight, we have proven, I think, that America is a better country, because that's, you know... Lewis has sort of proven that to me. Do you think that's fair enough? Poor Lewis, I put him on the spot right at the end of the show. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Thank you for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week, of course, when steam trains were pronounced racist. Boris Johnson put his foot in his mouth over Ukraine, and important questions were raised about the extent to which the NHS might have been captured by gender identity ideology. Thanks so much to my panel, Nick Dixon and Lewis Schaefer, who've been absolutely wonderful, and to my guests, Raquel Rosario Sanchez, Baroness Nicholson, and Fraser Myers. And by the way, if you want to hear more from Simon Fanshawe, you can do that. That's on Free Speech Nation, the podcast, and the full interview, that's live now. You can access that wherever you usually download your podcast. You can also see that on YouTube, and we talked about all sorts of things, including equity, diversity, the history of Stonewall. He was one of the founders of Stonewall. It was a very interesting conversation that we had. And by the way, if you want to join us live in the studio and be part of our wonderful audience, then please do. You can apply at www.sroaudiences.com. Just apply, come along and join in the fun. And stay tuned now for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. And don't forget, of course, that Headliners is on every night at 11 p.m. That's on tonight as well. Of course. Thank you so much. Join me next week for Free Speech Nation. Goodbye.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking dry with some sunshine after any early fog patches clear, though feeling chilly. Let's take a look at the details. In the southwest, it will be a dry start to the day. It will be largely cloudy, but still bright and calmer than Sunday, feeling chilly in the east. Further east, a clear start to the day across southeastern England, dry too. Frosty for many away from major cities, but it will soon warm up. Moving over to South Wales now, like the southeast, it will be a largely cloudy and mild start here, but clear and chilly in the east. Next, we'll travel to northwest England, where it will be a crisp and sunny start to the new working week. Temperatures may be as low as -4 Celsius in rural areas. Onwards and eastwards, coastal parts of northeast England will be cloudy with the odd spot of rain on Monday morning. However, looking further inland, it will be dry and sunny, but frosty. Those in southern Scotland may see some patchy fog around dawn, though this will soon clear to leave a chilly but sunny start to the week, with lighter winds than Sunday. Finally, let's move over to Northern Ireland, who will continue to see cloudier skies throughout the morning, though that does mean temperatures will be in the high single figures. Many will see further long-lived sunshine, and by lunchtime it will feel much warmer in the south, and that's how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.